I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on January 20th, 2017. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this live webcast, we do have a chat room that's available for you right below the main video window. So if you just look down, right down there, there's a chat room there. There's a login button, bottom left-hand corner. Just select that, choose the guest account, put your name in where it says guest, take the number out. Put your name in there, hit submit, and you'll drop you right in our chat room. We will be taking live questions, and that's the best way to get information into us. If you are listening to the recorded version of this and you've missed the opportunity to ask us questions, that's okay. We'll still take them. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and Clifton Strengths training needs. You can also catch the video on both streaming and now downloadable audio for offline listening. Really, best way to recoup all this time. What Mark is going to say today, super important. And so you want to recoup that professional development that we do for you each week. In the car, on a train, in a plane, many of you travel. Those are great ways to listen to it, download it to your phone. Everything and all the links and all of our resources are available on our coach's blog. Just go to coaching.gallup.com. Mark Pogue is the executive director of the CliftonStrengths Institute on the campus of University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Mark, that's a mouthful. Welcome to Call to Coach.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we caught up with you back in the spring, you, me, and Todd. And so I would ask folks if they missed that update, just put in Called to Coach EP10 Mark Pogue, and you will find that right there on YouTube. But Mark, let's dig right in. Give us kind of a little bit of an update. We're now early spring. You guys are just back to school, and you had a fall behind. What's going on at the Clifton Strengths Institute? And what kind of things do you want to share with us?
Well, I think the last time we talked about strengths, I know we talked more about EP10 the last time we were on with Todd, but the last time we talked about strengths, we were kind of getting ready to try and experiment here at the University of Nebraska, where we moved not just to having student assistants that were working with students in classes that were separate from the big lecture that I had with all of the incoming CBA freshmen, College of Business freshmen. We were deciding to move to a model where we'd actually train student coaches and have those student coaches working individually and having one-on-one conversations with the students in our freshman class. And so last spring was just no holds barred recruiting, as well assessing and interviewing a lot of students that had an interest in coaching. And we had quite a task. In fact, I think looking back on it, when I presented this to the dean of the college, Donnie Plowman, and just said, "Well, I think what I want to do is I want to move to this coaching model." She secretly, outwardly she said, "Sure, go for it." And I think inwardly she's saying, "Are you kidding me?" Because what we needed was 80 coaches to get a ratio that really worked in terms of expectations that we'd have of coaches and then serving the needs of the students appropriately. We needed about 80 coaches because we were expecting around 800 in the fall. I think we ended up having 730 freshman students. And so we needed to recruit a bunch of coaches. And so we went crazy doing that all over campus. We couldn't even recruit exclusively from the CBA just because the numbers were too great. And quite frankly, when we look at the strengths distribution of the College of Business, we don't have a lot of empathy. We don't get a lot of includer. We don't have a whole lot of individualization.
Relator.
So we tried to target some groups on campus that we felt like, intuitively would have more of that. We recruited a bunch of great coaches from a master's program in higher ed administration. These are basically folks that are wanting to go into student affairs work. And so you kind of get that idea that we were trying to do a little bit of tactical recruiting in areas that we felt like we might find some gems, and we did. We found some great folks. And we did find, I think, in fact, at the end of the day, after we looked at recruiting from, we recruited from the Ed Psych department. We recruited from the College of Education. We recruited from a few different organizations on campus. One was called NHRI. It was, a program that Don Clifton and John Hall has started years and years ago. I mean, I think this thing has a 60-year history on the college campus of setting up students to be mentors to high school students. And we thought, well, that might be a good place to go if those folks have already self-selected. And we went after them. I think we ended up getting 17 folks out of that group. And there was at least, I think, 20 students that had individualization in their top 5, as well as, a lot of empathy, a lot of includer, a lot of those strengths that we would, we don't have to have for coaches, but, if I'm going to make a bet on that versus others, I might make that bet.
Yeah, Mark, let me ask you, how did you select? I mean, certainly you're not selecting based on strengths at that point.
Nope. We were just
to recruit that many students in that short of time. What kind of effort did you do? I think that'd be some good insight.
We basically got in everybody's calendar. I think between myself, Samantha Kennelly, the coordinator for the CliftonStrengths Institute, we probably went to, 20, 30 student organizations and individual groups, encouraging them to apply. So we went everywhere. We tried to get ourselves in front of as many groups as we possibly could. And, I think the trick was trying to, not only help them understand the opportunity that they'd have to coach other students. And if those folks were, intuitively interested in that, it piqued their interest. That was great. But we also tried to help them understand that this could possibly be one of the best ways to prepare you to be a manager of human beings once you graduated from college. It's certainly the most practical offerings that there are on campus to have that kind of experience. Obviously, College of Business has a lot of great courses in organizational behavior. And, they have a lot of great coursework in that, but it is very theoretical, and there's not a whole lot of practical application within that, especially the opportunity to actually sit down with somebody one-on-one, talk through their goals, and then have strengths as a resource to help them figure out, okay, what's the best way for me to aim who I am as a person, the unique qualities that I possess towards these goals that I have for myself in my college career, and then what comes after.
Yeah. So recruit them in the spring. They know they've got kind of this job coming up in the fall. Then what kind of training did you put them through? What was the program to get them ready?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a moving target because I think we'll continue to adjust what we did. But our first shot at it was to have them participate in about a 6-hour training on a Friday afternoon, evening. So they were already making a pretty strong commitment to working with us, just volunteering that evening with us. So we had 6 hours with them then, and then we had a 1 hour, and it ended up being primarily two things: training, ongoing training for the coaches, but as well just kind of setting them up to work through the administrative details that they needed to just kind of have an awareness of working with the students in their classes. Their responsibility not only included those one-on-one coaching sessions, but they were also responsible for a team of 10 students. And then they were grouped together in classrooms, just kind of the natural configuration of the classrooms in this existing CBA building, which is mostly 30 students. And most new buildings that are being built, and the one that we have being constructed right now on campus, the minimum size is 50 to 70. And so, but what we do is we'd group 3 coaches with 3 teams in one, and they would have an hour that was there to kind of review what I covered in lecture, and then as well also help the students go through some other activities that we had designed for them to kind of think about, okay, what do I do in college that helps me, that prepares me in the best way possible to be engaged in the work that I do after college, and also have overall life well-being. So those were our 2 targets. And we wanted the coaching experience to contribute to that one-on-one coaching experience to contribute to that as well. But that was also something that we covered in team meetings. So we were working with the Gallup Purdue Index to do that. We took the 6 items out of the Gallup Purdue Index. We actually got permission from Gallup to use that survey. So students actually ask there was a version that they asked of themselves. So they self-assess themselves on the items of the Gallup Purdue Index. And then they were also required to go out and do a little Gallup survey work themselves. They were supposed to find somebody that had graduated from college, wasn't their parents. I didn't want low-hanging fruit, which they kind of naturally tend to gravitate towards.
You're mean.
I know. You wish they all had achiever in their top 5, but unfortunately,
not all.
Some of them have strategic, and they figure the shortest route possible. So they actually asked those questions as well from somebody that was had graduated from college, was in work, in a job. And so then they collected that data as a team and then came up with a presentation that they made within their team meetings. So that was kind of the work that they did to kind of think about, some of those items, especially, what can I do as a student to get myself involved on campus? We know kind of the big buckets that some of those correlated items came up with in the Big Six were, one, me getting involved on campus. So whether it meant student activities or deep involvement in a class or an internship. And then the other side of that was relationships. So do I have a professor on campus that cared about me? Do I have a professor that made me excited about learning? Some of those kinds of things.
Yeah. What was the carrot you dangled for the coaches? Because these aren't paid coaches. And I think some of our universities, when they take on strengths, they kind of think, oh, now we're going to have to train or get a professional core of coaches.
Yeah.
These 80 that you got, right? Just student volunteers. And what, how did that work? Tell me a little bit about how that worked.
They did get a little money, Jim.
Okay, good.
And
Good.
the way but the money was so little in terms of the work and effort that they put in. They didn't get paid for any of the training that they had to go through or any of that. We had just because it was already kind of designated for this class previously, we were able to kind of leverage, some funding that was already there. But the way I pitched it, and I felt like it was a pitch. This was a sales job to get folks to say, okay, yes, I want to do this. And yes, I think it's worthwhile. I led with that coaching piece. I led with that preparation for management piece. Case in point, we had one student that came to us, Max, from the education college, and his aspiration is to eventually be a high school principal. That's what he wants to do. And, he's going to start out teaching and try to progress into administration. And he looked at this as an opportunity to really give him some practical experience on not only understanding how to coach and understand how to help students be successful, but also he's thinking ahead of the opportunity that this would give him to get some experience around how he might coach other teachers and manage other teachers. So that's why he came into this. But the way I pitched it was, you coach for free and we pay you about $300 to work with Blackboard, or now Canvas, the learning management system. But, especially Blackboard was painful. I mean, it looks like a program that was designed probably late 80s, early 90s, and is so completely menu driven that you got to go through 6 or 7 clicks to get to the thing that you want to do. So I felt like, we were asking a big thing for them to go in and just grade papers and kind of keep up with some of that kind of stuff. So we paid them to do Blackboard. Now we've shifted over to another LMS called Canvas. And we pay, and they coached for free. And that's the way I kind of proposed it.
Yeah, no. And you were telling me about this in the pre-show, and I thought, man, what a great pool from an employer standpoint. I'm like, hey, Mark, how do I get, as we look for managers for Gallup, this is the pool we should draw from. I would also think in local areas, like if a university's got a system going like this would be a dynamite area when you think about management and a staff to start drawing from. So, and we had a coach that I know that was on that's one of our interns that did this as well. She was really, really excited about the opportunity to coach. I mean, I think sometimes, like you're saying, just the experience is worth it to them, right? From that standpoint. And so a great experience for them. Okay. So you got them trained, students landed on campus, 700 and some took the assessment, got their strengths. What did that look like throughout the fall for them? And from a coaching standpoint, how did that work?
Well, it's a bell curve. You've got, this is a class that's required. They have to pass this class in order to move forward in the CBA. It's not one of those things that you can skip over. And quite frankly, when you have a large public university like the University of Nebraska, you have a lot of students that come in that majored in business because their parents told them to. Or they didn't know what else to major in. Accounting starts with, it's ACC, so it's usually at the top of the list in terms of majors that are listed alphabetically. So, you have a bunch of them majoring in accounting.
You'd hate to think they're picking their major. Really? Is that what you're telling me?
I think statistically we can support that, sadly, sad but true.
Wow.
And so we have students coming into the College of Business that are thinking, I don't know what else to. And they major in accounting and they pose it as a question. What do you want to major in? Accounting? So it starts with that. And so you have this bell curve. You have students that probably shouldn't be in the College of Business, and some that have not really been, they're not really ready for college. So you have that group. And so you're working with a huge range. And I think our coaches, they had the test of fire trying to figure that out. Being students themselves, some of them were sophomores, some of them just completed their first year of school, but were intrigued by the whole idea of strengths. And, even though we didn't have necessarily a coaching program when they took this course, but they were interested in it. And so, we had, a range there as well, in terms of the age of the students. I think overall we had a tremendous success. And I think in a large part because we got some great coaches out of the gate. Probably a couple that I wouldn't invite back, not because that they were bad people, but just this was not their thing. It probably was one of those pieces that they thought of as being a resume builder. And if you go in with that and you don't have the talent to go along with it in terms of being able to help those students, through that coaching experience, you might run into, some tough times. There might be some difficult conversations as a result of that.
What kind of tracking or kind of metrics did you keep on that to be able to know that?
Right. Thanks for asking that. We're still trying to get that nailed down, but we were able to do a survey at the end of the 8-week course, which that's what it is. It's an 8-week course that starts the first day of the semester in the fall. So right in August, we kick off and we're done 8 weeks later, and it just goes by in a blur. But we do in a pre and a post with all of the students. We have a variety of items in that pre-post. We try to cover hope, engagement, well-being. We also want to cover those big 6 items from the Gallup Purdue Index. And then we have some others that are more associated with what we'd call strengths efficacy. So we dig a little bit deeper in terms of how they think specifically about leveraging their strengths. And then when they're finishing up, we also ask the Q12 items. So we don't do that on the front end just because they don't have a context. It's their first couple of days on campus, and asking a question, do you have a best friend at work, is probably not appropriate contextually since they haven't been there but more than a couple of days. So we wait on Q12 to the end. But we also ask about 16 items of the student specific to the coaching experience that they have. And then we also assess the coaches themselves. We also have a set of items that we ask the coaches. Some of them are variations of Q12, so I think I was mentioning to it before we got started that we had 94% of students agree their coach encouraged their development. And obviously, if you're familiar with Q12, there's a variation on one of the items specific to management or somebody at work. But in this context, we made it specifically about the coach.
Yeah. And so did you have any feedback with those coaches then after those scores came back in? Did you guys go back with the coaching staff and kind of say, congratulations, or how did that work?
Yeah, we tried to get as many quotes as we could from coaches just based on their experience. I've got a couple here that I could probably share with you. I've got a little infographic that we're putting together. Holly Pham was was just an excellent coach, really committed to her students, and really got into the process of coaching students. Holly's an international business major, and international business and English major. And here's a short quote from her. Every student I worked with has their own battle, passions, questions, and goals. After a coaching session, I can immediately tell they feel more confident with themselves and utilizing their strengths to succeed. And, we got a bunch of different responses from coaches in terms of how they felt about the experiences they had with their students. But I think Holly highlights what we felt like came back from most of those coaches, that we might have had some difficulty trying to help students understand the importance of this and really motivating them around showing up for a coaching session. Not for most of them, but for a few players. That was kind of there was a little extra work that some of our coaches had to do to get them into those coaching sessions. But once those students finished those sessions, most of them came out both feeling like they had, some value around that time. I think, just in itself, that you would have 2 one-on-one appointments with somebody that cared about you and your development during your first 8 weeks of school is saying something about the commitment that the school has to you being successful. And then on top of that, for it to be an entirely positive conversation around strengths that you can leverage to be awesome and that you can leverage to be highly successful within the college, or if you decide to move out of the college. I mean, there was a couple of students that, after really taking a close examination of their strengths, decided to move into the education college or to move somewhere else on campus, based on what they felt like they heard from their strengths. So, which is great. We want folks to land where they ought to be.
Yeah, and so that's one of the stats. Were there others? In the pre-show, you mentioned a few others as well that you guys are kind of tracking from a percentage standpoint.
Yeah, some of the highlights, 92% of students thought the time spent with their coach was a positive investment. So we had a lot of students just coming back saying, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed my coaching session. And they're still so young and fresh into their strengths. We're hoping that they're catching most of what we're trying to relate to them, both in lecture and then trying to give them a context for understanding how these strengths can be applied in all kinds of different areas. One of the things that we know, and we kept trying to communicate to our students, is that this is going to be something that they revisit over and over here in the College of Business. There's a commitment from the University of Nebraska College of Business that all their students would be able to really understand who they are and how they can leverage that uniqueness to be successful in the world. And, we specifically use StrengthsFinder as that tool to get there. And so therefore, we've got a lot of professors that are taking steps towards integrating strengths into group and teamwork that they're doing. We have one of our professors here that's the head of the supply chain management department that is working really closely with the CliftonStrengths Institute on, one is, should I use strengths to divide my groups up into teams, my students up into teams? Should that be something I consider? I go, heck yeah, I'll try it. I'd say that's probably really healthy not to have every single person on a team have competition. Although that's very difficult to do in the College of Business. One of the things that we've had the opportunity to do now is start to actually collect data just based on the frequency of themes showing up, and competition is number one in the College of Business by a long shot. I mean, it's just kind of scary. We have 242 out of 736 students had competition number one. It's the number one theme in our college.
Wow.
And then learner is in the bottom six.
And that's a flip from what we see globally when we think about those numbers, right? Even in some countries, that's a big flip. And so that's pretty unusual. A couple questions from the chat room. John is kind of wanting to know, and his question's kind of around the coaches. They have access to these students for the 8 weeks. Does that continue on? And then do you have any continual training for these coaches, or how are you encouraging them through the 8-week cycle?
Okay, thanks, John, for bringing that back up. So once we do the longer, that one evening training to kind of get things started, really dive into the concepts of, strengths-based development, understanding that we're approaching this from that strengths perspective versus a weakness prevention mentality, and kind of getting all those basics in. Then in the fall, what we do is we try to put the coaches in as many scenarios as we can where they can practice some of the things that we're asking of them in the coaching sessions. And we, quite frankly, we've got to manage this range that we have. So we've got sophomores, we've got students that they didn't know what their strengths are before they got selected, and then we ask them to take the StrengthsFinder assessment. So there's some coming into the training that are that fresh, but we feel like have the talent to be successful to coach. And so what we want to do is we want to provide a structure for them in those coaching sessions. So there's a format. It's not just kind of an open-ended strengths coaching session that we would expect out of a certified strengths coach from Gallup, where you kind of start with this open-ended process and work towards the goals that the client wants to work on. We kind of outline that for them and say, basically, you need to work on your time management, on your study habits, and on relationships on campus. So those are the three things we're going to tackle. And then we give a structure to that for the coaches to work through, because we feel like for every student in the first 8 weeks of college, everybody can learn from that. The second coaching session really does kind of delve more into that structured, there's still a structured format, but it is more so about, okay, let's start to think about your strengths in a broader sense in terms of what comes after college, and thinking a little bit more about career and options that you have moving forward. So it's a little broad, there's a little more latitude there in the conversation, but there is still some structure.
Mark, do you think those students will maintain those relationships? It's an 8-week cycle and then it kind of ends. Does that kind of continue to go on, or how are you guys thinking about that?
We've left that really up to the coaches because we're no longer paying they're not compensated for doing that. Anecdotally, I know that most of the coaches reached out to their students and said, hey, if you need to talk about anything, if you want to follow up on some of the things we talked about in your coaching sessions or what you're going through in the class, feel free to utilize me as a resource. And that's not something that we're formally tracking, but it would really be cool to find out, how much of those, we know that those conversations are going on, but I haven't formally tracked that.
Yeah, that might be interesting in a graph, right? Of student to coach, make that connection, ask that question 3 years later, especially when we think about the Big Six and the Gallup Purdue. That does that person have an impact their freshman year? Man, as you're talking about this, it's just a reminder of the critical nature of that, of discovering those things in those early hours of their freshman year, right? In school. Right. So that's, to me, that's pretty amazing. When we just think about the value. Are you anticipating
let me interject one thing to that, though, because that follow-up piece is something that we have been thinking about. It's not like we're just kind of passing that off and saying, okay, we're done with you, move on, unless you want to be a coach, and then, hey, come on back, But instead, one of the things that I know that we'll have in place once we're in the new building, right now, we're just restricted in terms of, the amount of square feet that we have here in the old CBA. So once we're in the new building, we have an amazing facility that we'll be moving into. One, we've got a big open area that we'll be able to do all kinds of workshops in. We have 3 individual smaller little cubicles. But they're not cubicles. There's actual doors on them. These are what would be thought of as like interview rooms. If you saw them in the career services office or something, you might think, okay, that's an interview room. But we've got 3 of these small rooms that we'll have set aside just for coaching. So students can either sign up for coaching. We'll have a calendar and the ability for students to sign up for an appointment, or they can do drop-in coaching. And we plan on having our strengths coaches. What we'll do is it's one of those things where if you get high ratings from your students as a coach, you're going to get opportunities to, extend that coaching experience that you have. We want to build levels in so that eventually we've got a team of kind of our, crack troops, our crack coaches having the opportunity to actually get paid to do hourly coaching. And, has some funds set aside for that as well. So there will be opportunities for ongoing coaching, even if it isn't with that specific strengths coach that you had in that fall experience.
Yeah, you alluded to this, but I want to still ask the question. Do you feel like you'll have a better crop of students to pull from out of that CBA class because they were coached? Last year they weren't. This year you have a whole group that were coached and went through that experience. Are you already starting? I mean, it's January. Are you already starting to think about coaching for next year? Talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah. Yep. We opened up the website for folks to sign up as coaches even last fall. So we're busy in that cycle right now. We need about 60 this year. We have enough returning coaches that we're not going to have quite as many, and we'll have more experience with that group, which is awesome. Or any experience at all, I guess, is the way I should say that, right? But we did see a lot of students that got a lot from those coaching experiences. And I think also, we had our coaches encouraging students that they felt like would really enjoy being a coach. They were encouraging them. So, we're starting out the spring semester with quite a few folks that have already signed up that are interested in coaching. Yeah.
Mark, Joanna in the chat room asks, does strengths impact how the university should organize its admissions? And, we kind of alluded to this a second ago. You were like, hey, some students are just picking accounting because have you any thought into some pre-work, even as seniors are starting to think about coming into the school? Any thought along those lines?
Oh man, wouldn't that be great? In a perfect world. I think, some schools have experimented with that. I know years ago, Baylor was actually issuing codes before students showed up for new student enrollment. I'm pretty sure that was the case. I know it was before the Baylor Line Camp, which I think is that kind of, orientation that students go to prior to classes starting. So I don't know how they have that organized now, but I know at one point in time Baylor did that. There's probably some other schools that have attempted that to do something on the front end. Smaller schools typically that attempted to go ahead and have students take StrengthsFinder prior to it, so they have that information to work with. I think it's difficult. It's hard to sit down with the student and also kind of manage expectations that parents might have of what the student's going to major in. But I certainly think it's relevant. I think having a conversation around those natural inclinations that a student has and where that person finds their energy to get things done, that those could be really helpful conversations in terms of, figuring out what that first semester of classes look like, irregardless if it's, going as far as just declaring a major.
Yeah, that's a big decision. Yep. Now that we're in the second year, so we're a year and a half kind of into this full speed, have there been any other inklings from other departments, other colleges on campus to see this model and think, hey, wait a minute, are you seeing any of that yet?
Yeah. There's interest across campus in a variety of formats. So we've had, first, there was just a really, there was a lot of interest, especially in staff development. So opportunities to work with different groups of staff that are, interested in that being just a part of their culture as a working organization. And then as well, I've had opportunities to present to the College of Education and to some other departments where they're looking at it and going, okay, well, what are some things that we could do as students? And they're looking at our model and trying to figure out, okay, does that fit within our college? And if it doesn't, what could we do? We've had some very specific interest from the engineering college, from the College of Architecture. The law school already does a lot of stuff with strengths. So, they're building on what they're already doing, and got some good things going on over there. So I do think that, slowly but surely we'll continue to see greater interest across the campus. Obviously, our desire is that we would bring strengths across the entire University of Nebraska-Lincoln campus, So, we're talking about a fairly large student population, and it's not something that you swallow in one bite. And so we're working on it.
Slow and steady is what Jim Krieger would say, right? Slow and steady as we work. Make it scalable. I think if there's a lesson to be learned in all of this is we get excited about it and we'd love to see it roll out all across campus and very, very quickly. But I think we know you need to build these in a scalable way, right? That I can build processes that work and work efficiently. I have enough students to support it, and that's going to turn over time. We started our internship program here at Gallup. We started with 4, and this summer we'll do 30. Right. And so slow and steady for 5 years later or so, slow and steady. So that'd be my encouragement as well. You mentioned the law school. They actually have StrengthsFinder built into their app. So the Rake School built them a mobile app. You and I got a chance, right, to walk over this. So that's kind of cool to see some of those things make their way, their way into the fabric of the organization. That's pretty cool.
And there's been conversations with the College of Business now to see if that app would be viable for them to bring into the College of Business. So, look a little different. We're talking about an undergrad population, but there's opportunities there too.
Well, when I saw that and I brought you in, my hope was we could just reuse code, right? It's like, hey, guys, the ideas are the same. Can we just reutilize that code and then make that a campus-wide kind of strengths app for everyone in the organization? It'll be a little bit different, you're right, but some great opportunities there. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit because we want to catch up on the Builder program. We talked about this. Can you give a quick, just kind of overview of what we're doing from the Builder program, and then I'll ask you some.
Oh yeah, you bet. So the Clifton family, when they made the commitment to the gift that they gave to the College of Business, one of the things that I think they were most intrigued with, certainly Jim Clifton was most intrigued with, was can we build a program that helps us identify high potential entrepreneurs, invest in them, and give them some tools to be successful more quickly in starting businesses. I think he sees that as being kind of a crucial issue for our country. Knowing that we have more businesses dying than are starting every year. We crossed that threshold a few years ago, and that becomes an issue. So What we did in the spring of last year was we, created an invitation for students to apply to be a part of what we call the Clifton Builders Program. And it started out as a certificate. We're actually having a conversation this afternoon about actually moving that to a minor within the College of Business, which would be great. It'll just show up a little bit easier on a transcript, so students will be able to reference that when they're applying for jobs. But we started out as a certificate, and basically what we did was we built a set of courses that start with one that I have the opportunity to teach. And I say opportunity, it was a real gift to be with this group of students and to work with them over a semester. And basically what we did was we created a course that we felt like would give them some tools that if they so wish, they could, start thinking about, starting a business and building a business pretty quickly. We attack it in 3 different ways, though. So it's not just purely business builders that are invited to be a part of the Builders Program. We certainly want to generate as many of those folks, pure business builders as we can, those folks that want to start out and start a for-profit business. But we also recognize that there's a lot of folks with entrepreneurship talent that are going to fall in a role of starting something within an organization. And, I think of you as being a perfect example of that, right? So you've got this whole, domain of
all these webcasts.
The webcasts. You are the king of the webcasts within Gallup.
Yeah, no, for sure. Those didn't exist before I got here.
That's correct. That's starting something. Right. And so that's the intent, is that if we've got folks that have energy to get things started within an organization, we certainly want to invite them and develop them as well. And then a third category are those folks that are really more interested in social entrepreneurship. So maybe they want to start an organization, but they want to start a nonprofit. And we want all 3 of those groups to be mingling and mixing together, learning from each other. And so that's what we ended up with in the fall. We had 19 students that were eventually selected for this first cohort. And we hope that group would grow. We think that probably the perfect number is somewhere between, 35 and 45 eventually, because that gives us an opportunity also to create separate sections for those students to be able to continue to take coursework together, which would be an awesome experience because they have such deep relationships that they develop with each other out of the course that I teach. So mine is called Building a Life for Impact. It's a 3-hour course. And in that course, we tackle strengths-based leadership. We tackle well-being. We go in depth on their EP10 score. So we really explore that talent in the context of their strengths and really help them think about just developing as a human being. We make sure that they also have in-depth coaching from Gallup coaches that invest in them. And then we also have them working through First Break All the Rules. And so this latest edition of First Break All the Rules had codes in it for you to actually have a team participate in Q12. And it also had a StrengthsFinder code in it. And so the big project that these students ended up being broken up into teams and participating in is they got a crash course in Q12. We had Mike McDonald come over from Gallup and spend a lot of time thinking with them about what it meant to be engaged in your work. And then not only thinking about it as an individual, but also thinking, okay, if you're a successful entrepreneur and your business is growing, all of a sudden you hire somebody and, oh my gosh, now you're a manager as well as a business starter. So what does that mean? So then we broke these students up into teams of, I think they were mostly 4 and 5. They were assigned a business in Lincoln. A lot of them were given responsibilities for a work group within a business. And they were assigned a manager. We hooked them up with managers that were willing to experiment, take a shot at this grand experiment of having students come in and talk about engagement. So they met with the managers. They offered them strengths feedback because we were lucky enough to have enough strengths coaches within this first cohort of builders to be able to offer feedback. So we had some sophomores in college that were coaching students, had hopefully about 20 hours of coaching experience underneath their belt, going in and then coaching with a manager and helping them understand how to leverage their strengths as a manager with their team. They collected Q12 data, and then they went back and they did a team session that kind of revealed the data that they had from the Q12, and then as well they conducted an action planning session with that team. So an incredible experience that these folks had. I think we also challenged them to participate in an opportunity on campus called the 3-2-1 quick pitch. So we asked every single builder to at least apply. And I think we had probably 16 of our 19 students actually made a pitch at the 3-2-1 quick pitch. It's just a real quick opportunity to take an idea. You don't have to have a fully developed business plan, but you pitch it in front of a bunch of entrepreneurs and you get feedback. We had 2 of our students out of that group that actually, won part of the award that they had available to further your idea. And so I think 2 of our students got a stipend of like $350 just to do something with their idea. So that was fun too. So all kinds of great opportunities, as well as that coaching piece that I mentioned.
Yeah, that's great. We model a little bit of our high school program after what you guys are doing. And so our students are all winter are out as a team. So we put them together in strength-based teams. We give them some coaching on how to work in groups and what to do around software and some of those kinds of things. And we send them away for the winter. They will come back. Monday is their last check-in, Saturday, this Saturday coming up. So their last check-in before we call it VC day, right? It's their pitch to get money. They need to be ready.
Okay.
It needs to be polished. It can be proof of concept, but it's still, they need to have enough things there that somebody would maybe invest in them. And then we give them 4 weeks to hack on their projects. And then they present those to the Gallup managers when they're done, and they get an interview, right? That's kind of our program. We're kind of, I'm interested, you and I, maybe offline, we'll need to share some successes you're having, because we'd love to do more. So speaking of that, Mark, are you available? Like if other universities were interested in thinking about this, are you available for a little bit of consulting around what we're doing? How does that work? How would they get
I mean, it'd be as easy as just shoot me an email and let me know what you're interested in doing, and maybe what you're doing already, and how you want to build that out. So you'll give them my information, but it's mpog@unl.edu.
Okay, perfect. We got to see the results of those consulting exercises, right? So talk a little bit about that event, if you could, because there's a final event that wraps it up very impactful.
Yep. So it was so interesting because, the group of students that I had were, they're students, and they don't think of themselves as consultants. So we spent a number of weeks just kind of drilling. I would put a team up and I'd say, okay, why are you here? Why, as a manager, should I give you the time and access to my team? Why should we be going through this exercise? So they really had to justify themselves being there. And I got pretty intense with them in terms of asking them questions that would potentially show up. I've had enough of experience myself consulting around Q12 in my days at Gallup. And so the opportunity to sit there and really kind of pound them on some difficult questions. And we had some good times with that. I think what was really special about the builders was that it was a small enough group that we could become intimate enough with each other that we didn't, it didn't feel like we were embarrassing each other, but we were learning together, and sometimes at the expense of one person versus another, but everybody got their share of getting a dish to them. And so out of that, I think we came out of it that the teams all came out of it really strong and knew exactly what the expectations was. I kept saying to them, listen, the least of your worries is getting a grade in this class. What your real worry should be whether or not you're embarrassed by, what happens in this consulting relationship that you have with your client. If you disappoint your client, that's going to feel a lot worse than any disappointment that you would have on a grade for a project. And I think we got that across. And so once they had completed the project with the actual client, they were required to kind of pull that together in kind of a condensed format. And then we went and made presentations to Gallup. And we invited Jim Harder. Of course, Jim is kind of an author of so much of what we do around. He's the chief scientist around engagement globally. And so our students got to sit in front of Jim and a bunch of our other Q12 experts, people that just live and breathe this every day, and present their information and then get ready for questions. And so I think they were all nervous, but they were all so excited about the opportunity to have that experience. And as well, they were really affirmed by our Gallup friends to the work that they had done and what they had accomplished. And it was a great experience for all of them. All of them reflected very positively on the opportunity to go to Gallup. And they got a tour. You were a tour guide, graciously hosted some of our students and gave them a tour and really gave them a perspective on how we approach work and what engagement looks like at Gallup.
What kind of feedback did you get from the organizations that they consulted with, I'm sure you
Mhm.
asked for some solid feedback.
We did. And, one of the things I think that was pretty consistent with what we had coming back, and, again, we have to think about, okay, the age range. These were mostly sophomores. I think we had 2, maybe 3 juniors that were in the program as well this year. But in the future, it'll be mostly sophomores moving forward. Almost all the feedback that we have, and most of this is anecdotal, but the tone was, we appreciated the level of preparation that these students had coming in. They really knew their stuff. A lot of these folks had been, we called upon them because they had been connected to the university and had been willing to have student groups come in the past. And one of the consistent comments that we had coming back was that, we legitimately felt like these folks had something to contribute to our work team. We learned some things about who we are in terms of our engagement and how people, perceive some of the things that we do within our organization that we didn't have insights before. And that was pointed out by the work that the students did. So we felt like these were some of the best prepared students that we'd have come visit us and share with us.
Yeah. No, I was super impressed as I sat in that room and I watched them go through a Q12 analysis for each of those organizations. And I forget who I was sitting next to. And I said, these guys are rivaling some of our best Q12. I mean, just the insight they had, and it was obvious they had prepared and asked the right questions and gotten to know the business. It was not just about asking a few questions, making a few guesses, and then, moving on. They had really spent some serious time digging in. And I think a great learning experience. Is there a class going on right now, or is that just offered in the first semester?
Right. It's just in the first semester. So right now we're actually going through the recruiting process of our builders for 2017, for fall of 2017. And, that's based on their score on EP10. So we use that as one of the kind of the gateways to get into the program.
Right? Yeah. Predictive indicator going in on that. And so a lot of stuff going on there. Mark, anything else? But we have covered a ton. If you're listening to this, maybe you should rewind it and listen to it again. Mark, you've done a great job of kind of bringing us up to speed. Let me ask you this, and maybe we can kind of wrap it on this. When do you move into the new building?
Oh yeah, that's a great place for us to end. It's July. We'll be in the building in July, so we're hoping that it doesn't get delayed anymore. It shouldn't. Right now we're at that point where the building is entirely closed in, so there shouldn't be any weather issues that are delaying it. But yeah, we move in July, and then obviously classes will start up in the latter part of August. So we're hoping that they stay with their deadline. We're excited about the space that we have in the new building. It's right on the main floor. Unlike where we are today, it's really difficult for students to find us and just passing by. So that'll happen a lot easier. We also are going to be able to bring in that huge lecture that I have into the College of Business. So we're not going to have to be over in the Kimball Recital Hall. I won't be up on a stage, which is an incredibly uncomfortable thing to do with a bunch of freshman students that are trying to figure out how to stay engaged with what you're offering. So we'll have them in a really beautiful not traditional, but a really beautiful lecture facility that will allow for growth moving forward with our class. And so we're super excited about the new space.
It's great to hear. In the 90s when Nebraska was winning national championships, people would travel from all around the world to come see the facilities. And in those days, we had world-class facilities. I think we'll have a facility that I think as people are thinking about what does this mean to really take entrepreneurialism and strengths to an organization and teach it at the college level, I think people will need to come to Nebraska, make the hour trip to Lincoln and come tour your facility. I am sure we will have a big party when we cut the ribbon and that thing opens this summer. But I think it'll be a shining light of the way when we think about a strengths-based institute, we get that question from our coaches all the time. How do we do that? And I think from a academic standpoint, we'll have some real groundwork to say, here's how we do it. And yet the learning still continues. Mark, let's end on this. What are you hoping for in the next year or two when you think about what's ahead that you're really excited about, that you're thinking about?
Well, we want to continue to take what we're learning here and push that forward. So as you talk about the new building, there's a commitment from the College of Business to, give us the potential of actually hosting events here specific to strengths and specific to student development. So would have a front-end conference that would match up with the great Gallup Strength Summit and be able to offer a day or a day and a half here in Lincoln, utilize our beautiful facility, which incidentally, not only did you get to see this world-class facility for the College of Business, but we do have a window that looks out on that world-class facility where football happens too. So that's our view. That's our view out of the CliftonStrengths Institute. You can see the stadium right there. But my hope would be that we'd be able to host events and that what we're learning here could be kind of a catalyst and maybe a coalescing point so that we can bring what other people are learning and thinking about in terms of strengths development for students. We could pull all that together and have best practice sessions and opportunities to learn from each other, and that would be something that hopefully we could piggyback with the big Gallup Summit.
Is there, speaking of the summit, Gallup's the CliftonStrengthsSummit.com 2017 is coming up if folks want to start getting registered for that. Are you guys plan anything? Are you planning anything during
We're still waiting to find out just what kind of role we're going to play with it this year. So, I'm prepared to be available to do anything I need to do at the conference.
Yeah, well, and that may be a great time if folks are interested in speaking with you specifically about what's going on in their organization. I'm sure they could carve out some time with you during the summit. It would be a good reason to come and a good opportunity to meet you there on the grounds and be able to talk about that as well. So, Mark, thanks for taking 45 minutes. I'm hoping my goal for the next couple of years for you and I is that we have enough to talk about. We make this quarterly, and then maybe we start making it monthly, that we get an update and share the stories and some of those things that are coming down. I think for today, every 6 months is a great cadence that we've kind of gotten into. Yeah. Think about this. A couple of years ago, we really we're talking about Strengths Quest, right? Think about you were down in Florida, and we were just, we've done Strengths Quest for a long time, but we were dreaming about what could be at UNL, and now it's a reality, and you guys are doing a great job there. So congratulations on all you're doing, and we're excited. It's fun to watch. I think Samantha is a big part, right, of what you guys are doing down there, your partner in crime, and I hope she'll watch this. So Samantha, great job. I always enjoy spending time with her because she's so encouraging and a great partner down there for you. So she does well. Well, remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. If you want to just go to GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments if you are watching this in an offline mode and you can't join us in the chat room. By the way, thanks to all of those with the great questions in the chat room. You can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. And don't forget, you can catch all the recorded audio and video of this program. Plus, there's a bunch of past ones. You could go back if you just go to YouTube and search Call the Coach Mark Pogue or Call the Coach Strengths Quest, or those will all come up available for you if you want to go out there. The links to everything, including our Facebook group, YouTube page, iTunes, and RSS feeds, our iPhone and Android apps, it's all on our coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com. We mentioned the summit coming up again. The reminder for that, February 28th is the last day for early bird pricing. CliftonStrengthsSummit.com. You probably should start moving on that if you're thinking about joining us this summer, July 17th, 18th, and 19th. If you found this helpful, we'll ask that you share it. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.